everyone. Well, it has officially been 2 whole weeks that I quit my job to do this full time. Here I am today because I did a project and I remembered to record it. The last couple of weeks, I've just been doing a lot of planning. I went to Wyoming for a week up in the Bighorn National Forest and just sat with my thoughts, sat with my brain. Now, today's video is an unexpected video. Surprise, surprise. These are typically the videos that I, do a lot of. I'll get an idea in my head of some sort of craft or project that I want to do, and then I just film the process, and this is where we are. So today what I'm going to share with all of you is a super simple project that came to me yesterday, just in my brain. Who knows where, inspiration comes from, but the inspiration did come from this. So this, my friends, is a hexagon paper cutter. So a hexagon like this. Now, the thing with hexagons is I have worked with hexagons in the past for like the knitting machine. In fact, I created a whole set of designs using hexagon, different colors, and different things you could do with yarn. You could also do this with paper crafts, right? You can cut out a bunch of different hexagons, make the colors different. There are even rugs out there. I think there's a rug company that sells the different colored hexagons, and you can have a interchangeable mat, right? You can just make it suit whatever you want to. But yesterday I was thinking about hexagons because I've been doing a lot of quilting and a lot of fabric manipulation, upcycling. And I thought, you know what? Wouldn't it be fun if I could take these hexagons and put them together in a pattern that I could put on clothing? So that's where we are today. Now, I decided to go with this 1.5 inch hexagon. I do have another one that's a 3-inch hexagon. And if I was going to machine stitch all of them together, I would have gone with a larger hexagon, because hexagons, my friends, are not easy to work with. They're not easy to sew with on a machine. You have to do a Y join typically. And, I didn't really want to do that. So I'm going to share my process of cutting out a bunch of hexagons and creating this. So that is just different colors of fabric hexagons, and let's dive into how I put it all together. It's a project that realistically will take you a few hours. So I would say total for me, I ended up taking about 3 hours, but also I was trying to figure out the design and also what I wanted to put it on. So if you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's dive right in. So I'm going to start with this heavy cardstock, and I'm just going to create a template. This is going to make it easier to cut them out later. We are going to be cutting out quite a bit of these little mini hexagons, and I'll share all my number counts with you here shortly. But I'm just going to use a rotary cutter because it's simple for me, and it's also a way for me to kind of get a little mindless and relax for a little bit. So I just am cutting out each of these sides, and you do want to make sure that you're accurate. You could also use like a Cricut to cut these shapes out. There's other methods that you can use, but this is the method that I went with. So here are the hexagon color counts that you'll need for starting this project. It's probably a great idea to get these cut out first before you start assembling. I did actually use the same pattern that I created for the circular knitting machine and just adjusted it a little bit for this project. You can play with the colors, whichever works for you. And it's a great opportunity to use up some of those fabric scraps that you have laying around. Since the hexagons were so small, that 1.5 inch, I decided to use this sticky self-adhesive stabilizer. That way I could stick the hexagons in the shape that I wanted and then quilt over it. But again, there are many different methods you can use out there. So the way that this stuff works is super cool. So it's actually like an adhesive sticker on this backing paper, and you just cut to shape whichever size you're looking for, and then you'll peel off the backing, and now you have a very sticky surface. Now it's also pretty see-through, which is pretty phenomenal since I'm using my cutting mat, and each of those squares are about the same size as the hexagon. So it's making the process of laying everything out so much easier. So this process actually does take a little bit of time. And as I mentioned before, you do want to be accurate lining up all of those edges together because this paper is actually dissolvable in water. Now, I'm not going to rinse it away because I'm using it between layers of quilting, but you absolutely want to keep that in mind because if it dissolves when you put it in water, you might have spaces between your hexagons. I'm using tweezers because it does make it a little bit easier for me to adjust. And one of the other benefits of this sticky paper is that you can actually adjust the location of these hexagons as you go. So as you start to build it out, if you see it shifts a little bit, you can absolutely just make those minor adjustments. Once you're happy with the layout, I do recommend going back through with a little piece of tape or a lint brush and getting all those loose threads picked up before you start the quilting process. Also, you're gonna cut away all of that extra adhesive paper, but here's a tip for you: save all that you have left, because you can use this paper on so many different projects. And so just go ahead and cut it away and then stick it back on that backing paper, and again, use it for another project. Now for the quilting process, I'm actually using some felt that I got at a thrift store years ago, and then also this old tote bag. So I'm gonna sandwich those two together, and that's what's going to create the thickness for the quilting. Cure all the layers together, I just used straight pins. That worked for me, but you could also use safety pins. And then I decided on the pattern that I wanted to use. So I decided just to do straight lines, especially with all of the different shapes around the edges. I think straight lines was gonna look the best. So all I'm doing is actually using a 1/4 inch seam allowance and using the edge of my presser foot to create those equidistant lines. I'm also using a walking foot. So if you see there, a walking foot is a presser foot that you can add to your machine that works really well when you're using thick fabrics like quilting with all those layers, or denim. And as you probably know, I do a lot of work with denim. So my walking foot is almost always on my machine. So I'm just going to continue to stitch straight lines all the way down the project at a diagonal. And like I said, I'm just lining up the edge of that presser foot with the previous line of stitches. And so it gives me very, very exact lines of stitching. Once I finished one side, I flipped it around and did the exact same thing on the other side. And that gave a really cool crosshatch shape with the quilting, and I really like the way that turned out. So once you're done with the quilting piece, you're just going to cut away all of that extra fabric, and again, save that for a future project. And this is how it turned out. You can use this applique on sweatshirts, t-shirts, or in my case, I decided to use it on this upcycled denim vest that I got at a thrift store years ago, and I just pinned it directly where I wanted it on the denim and took it over to the machine to stitch it together. Here's how it turned out after I attached it on the machine. So I went back and did just a zigzag stitch all the way around to attach the applique to the denim, and I really like that I'm using lighter thread because it kind of gives a really fun little outline, and then this pops. The best part about this is a project that you can do in a short amount of time. You can play around with colors, get rid of your scraps, and create something that's super unique and personal, and also could be a really great gift. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time, everyone, see ya!